Hi everyone, I'm Jagravi Singh, and this is Race to 2030. Today's episode is about Goal 8, which is decent work and economic growth. The world faced the worst economic recession since the Great Depression. GDP declined by more than 4.2% in 2020. Due to the pandemic, the economic growth slowed down as more businesses closed. However, as vaccinations start to take hold, I hope more businesses can start to reopen to grow the economy once again. I hope they can do so sustainably so that we can still take steps to achieve these goals by 2030. To discuss this further, I'm joined by the MUN director of my school, Mr. Dustin Roberts. He's also the social studies teacher at my school, and he's incredible at his job. He has taught me so much about becoming a better delegate and most recently a chair. He has a great sense of humor and loves joining in during debate sessions as a delegate so that more students can be encouraged to take part. Besides MUN, I really enjoy discussing politics or the news in general with him.
So there have been many job losses caused by the pandemic. According to SPG Global, there are more than 3 million people that are out of work, and the number just increases every day as this pandemic rages on. Therefore, do you think achieving some level of economic growth can still be possible? If so, how?
Based on what I found earlier, like from a source earlier this month from the UN, there's more than 200 million people are unemployed as a direct result of the pandemic. So I know you said 3 million, but you gotta understand the scale of like what's happening in the world. Logically speaking, 3 million is kind of low. I bet in America alone, there's at least 3 million. But anyway, to answer your question, just because ordinary people don't have jobs, it doesn't mean national economies aren't growing. International relations plays a big role in that. For example, due to the economic sanctions placed on certain nations, it allows others to fill the holes, which lets that nation earn money. So COVID isn't the only thing that affects global economy over the last couple of years. Yeah, it's a big factor, but it's not the only factor. Vietnam, for example, the GDP has expanded by almost 2%, or it did expand by almost 2% in 2020. And some are projecting that the growth will be 7% for this year. So that means that despite COVID, the economy has been able to grow. So while a national GDP may have correlation to unemployment rates, the unemployment rates are not necessarily indicating whether or not the country's economy is growing.
There are many leaders and governments that are dealing with the economic damage caused by the pandemic, which is causing a global recession. What do you think governments should do to get their economy back on track and possibly create more jobs?
This is not an easy question to answer, but
Yeah.
first of all, I think I'm just going to keep it simple because I think it's too many. It's just not easy to answer. First of all, governments need to decide what's important in terms of making their country a better place. So obviously not every country has the same goals, but they need to prioritize things specifically for their country. After they've done that, those nations need to create more opportunities for people, like anyone, even lower, maybe subsidized education for lower income people. But at any rate, they need to educate their people in those sectors that the government deems are priorities for what they need. So that way they can provide jobs for the things that they need instead of just having people lost and not sure what to do or not sure about what to study when they go to university. For example, creating a police force that works towards restorative justice or rehabilitating people's behavior instead of reacting violently to them, that could provide millions of jobs for people. Not just the United States is the famous case, but it's not, police brutality isn't just in the United States, it's everywhere in the world. So, yeah.
So one of the targets of this goal is to diversify, innovate, and upgrade economic productivity. Do you think that people can still be economically productive during lockdowns? How can they?
So again, just like in my last answer, I'm going to talk about education again. It boils down to being educated and or having the resources to learn a new skill that can be capitalized on. So like since the idea of cryptocurrency is alive and kicking, a person who learns how to mine that currency by hosting a blockchain, for example, can earn by providing an access point for crypto transactions. So this is a way a person with low or middle income can earn money from wealthier people trading in big quantities of currency. So there are ways to earn money. You just, instead of having like a defeated sort of attitude, people need to, they need to work to find a way, basically.
Yeah. As the global goals are also about being sustainable, and many countries, particularly the US, is working towards an economically green future. How do you think that other countries can become economically green soon?
Well, before I talk about other countries, I want to say that I'm not sure how soon having an economically green future will happen in the United States, like especially with them like at the helm of it. Let's not forget that the US is very conflicted over a number of issues within its populace and the politics. They even like last year, or not last year, but I think it was I don't remember what year it was. All I know is the United States backed out of the Paris Climate Agreement.
Yeah.
So it basically just based on a political leader. So how do we, I mean, luckily Biden has put the country back into it, but how do we know that it can't happen again? Just like having another leader that has similar ideologies to the previous president. I think to assume that any large country with a large country with a large scale economy will become economically green within the next 50 years is a bit presumptuous or over idealistic. Yeah, we want it to happen, but will it happen? The smaller ones probably have a better shot. Smaller countries probably have a better shot of achieving green status. Have you ever seen a daily log of shipments being made around the world? When you see how many cargo ships circumnavigate the globe, how many enormous trucks are traversing the highways of each major nation, and how many planes are flying just to get products around the world, it's plain to see that our trade infrastructure alone needs to be exponentially cut. Not to mention factories for all products need to be completely reworked if we want to go green, have a green economy. And the way energy sources are extracted needs to be changed and or completely eradicated for sources that don't cause pollution. And I don't see any of that stuff happening anytime soon. That's, I mean, the being not green is part of the infrastructure and it's totally ingrained.
Now, my last question is about the country's economic success is all based on the creations or innovations of the young people in the country. So as Gen Z is reaching the age of adulthood, what do you think they should do to bring an economic rise to their country? What future do you envision when Gen Z takes over from the millennials?
First of all, I don't really agree with what you're saying. I don't think a country's economic success. Well, let me put it this way. I think a country's economic success is rarely based on creations or innovations of young people. On the contrary, economic success stems from a need that is being filled, meaning that people and nations are willing to pay for that thing that fills that need. They give that thing value, and then that's how economic success happens. It's pretty simple. And economic success in the era that millennials grew up in, similarly to past eras of modern world history, was predicated on the exploitation of workers who could be hired at infinitesimal salaries in comparison to what people in the area of the world that purchase most of the products actually come from. So, but likewise, the people in developing nations who benefited financially created more of a top 1% type of situation that already happens in the West. So basically, we're just on this cycle that extends a global wealth gap. Let's not forget that drug trafficking was probably the most successful business to be in during the time millennials grew up, while it remains a great way to earn money now. In fact, it's become easier for traffickers to launder their earnings due to the use of unregulated cryptocurrencies. So when Generation Z comes of age, you may actually see a drug dealer who becomes a high-ranking political official, since wealth usually goes hand in hand with politics. Yeah, I mean, it's what do I think Gen Z should do to bring in economic rise to their country? Probably legalize drugs and try to like drugs of all kinds for recreational use. Find a way to educate people so that they can have jobs and treating those people and treating ones that abuse drugs of recreation, and also to rehabilitate or change what police believe that their job is, because it shouldn't be like obviously the aggressive thing isn't working. Like it's not. It just creates more more criminals and overcrowds the prisons. So there needs to be more of a focus on rehabilitating people's issues in general. And yeah, I think that's what Generation Z should do. And then if they find a way to agree on a cryptocurrency that can be universal and like the one or just a few that hold a decent amount of value, then they can regulate it and get tax the drug traffickers and things like that. And maybe there'd be less crime because there'd be less trafficking. And when the people who are trafficking aren't worried about breaking the law, then they won't kill other people who are like stealing their money or stealing their drugs or talking to the FBI or whoever. So yeah, I guess that's my answer. Yeah, make drugs legal. Otherwise, like I think it'll just keep things will just keep being more corrupted like they are now.
Well, thank you for doing my interview today. And I enjoyed discussing this very important topic with you.
Yes, me too.
Well, that's it for my 8th episode. I'll be back for episode 9, which is Industry, Innovation, and Infrastructure. I enjoyed listening to the facts and ideas raised by Mr. Dustin. There might be some parts that we disagree on, but that's alright because through disagreements, we can come up with better ways of working along to achieve a certain idea. Let's work together diplomatically instead of just going against each other. Our economy can grow significantly when we are there collaborating on different ideas to make a new business, organization, or firm. The more ideas there are, the more likely it is to succeed. Thank you and see you all soon.